name is Adi, and I'm a guide to product market fit. I work with early stage startups, helping them save time, money, and heartache on their journey to product market fit. In today's video, I'm going to talk about how to measure product market fit in a B2B model. If you haven't checked out my video on how to measure it in a B2C model, be sure to check it out. So let's start. Today I'm going to cover two methods. Both were suggested by Andy Ratcliffe. The first one is based on a paper wrote by Mark Leslie and Chuck Holloway. This paper was called The Sales Learning Curve, which was published by Harvard Business Review. Be sure to check it out, it's highly recommended. Now, in their paper, they mentioned something called the sales yield, which is basically, and let me quote on that, it's the average annual sales revenue per full-time, fully trained, and effective sales representative. It basically means the ratio between how much your sales team is generating revenue and the cost of that sales team. So if you have a sales team that costs you $1 million a year and they generate $2 million, then the sales yield is 2. If they generate only $500,000, yet they still cost 1 million, then the sales yield is half. Fairly basic. Now, what Mark Leslie and Chuck Holloway are describing in their paper is the sales yield curve, which is an S-shaped curve for most B2B models. The reason for it to be S-shaped is because at the early days of the product, sales are hard to come by. You have early adopters that you need to recruit. You don't have a working playbook. The product is not mature. You have little kind of engagement with the audience. So it's very hard to create those leads and those sales, and they kind of lag a little by little. But eventually, hopefully, you make a breakthrough and things start to pick up. And eventually, there's a limit to how much you can optimize sales processes. So the sales yield flattens out depending on the business, the product, the domain. But during that cycle, that curve, there are a couple of points worth mentioning. The first point is when you get to a sales yield of 1. This means that if you have a sales team that costs you $1 million, they also generate $1 million a year. So when you get to that point, you have found product market fit. It indicates that you are on the right path, and now things need to develop. And what they suggest in their paper is how you can develop your sales team alongside the development of your product and your business. And what they suggest, I'll explain a little bit about it, is that when you get to that sales yield of 1, then you have probably kind of figured things out. That is why it's a proxy for product market fit. And now it's time to start putting the groundwork for your sales team, developing the playbook, recruiting the relevant sales team. So until up to now, it's probably the CEO or the VP sales or the product manager that were doing all the sales. Or maybe you had just a couple of sales reps, but they were not your regular sales rep. They were able to work with other playbook. They were able to scout and find those leads that are like early adopters. And when you have reached that sales yield of 1 and you have found product market fit, you can start transitioning to a more conventional workforce for sales. They're called coin-operated or dime-operated sales reps, sales agents, because you give them the playbook, you give them the right leads, and they'll generate revenue for you. So when you find product market fit, you can start the transition from your guerrilla sales team to a more unified, organized sales team. When you get to a sales yield of 2, it means that you can start doing the scaling and the optimization of the process until you reach, until the curve flattens. So measure that sales yield, see where you are on that curve, see how far you are, and that'll give you a hint on how far you are from finding product market fit. So the second method was suggested by Doug Leone from Sequoia Capital, another Silicon Valley giant. And what he suggested to Andy Ratcliffe is that when you have a potential customer, and usually there would be kind of a trial period or a pilot. And what he suggested that when the trial period ends, you pull the plug. It can be 2 weeks or 3, 4 weeks, it doesn't matter. But when it reaches the deadline, you pull the plug. The reason for it is that if at the end of the trial, you pull the plug and the customer is not shouting at you, "What did you do? I want my product back," then you probably don't have product market fit. So you need to create that kind of indication that they need your product and they need it urgently. And you can do so only by denying them access to that product. Now, in pilots in general, my recommendation is always to determine on the success criteria together with the customer, saying what would be considered a successful pilot. Let's point it out, and then you can walk towards that point. And when the trial period ends, you give a limit to it, and when it ends, you pull the plug. That's it. You had the time to evaluate. They don't need to have the entire value proposition delivered. They just need to make sure that it fits their needs, and then they need to pay for it. So don't make a mistake. Don't do long trials. Don't do endless pilots. And when the pilot ends, pull the plug. So I hope you enjoyed these tips. If you have questions, feel free to reach out by email, visit my website. You can add comments below. In the description, I've added a link to a quiz that you can take that can show you if you're on the right path to product market fit. So feel free to check it out as well. And I hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Bye bye.